Now joining me on the news to discuss this is Professor at the University of Manchester, Mukesh Kapila. He joins from Geneva, and international analyst Bolu Michael-Biyi. He joins from Manzini, Eswatini. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining this evening. Professor Mukesh, I'm going to start with you. Can you please help us understand the scale and urgency of the multiple, or rather the malnourished deaths reported recently in Gaza, particularly among the children?
Yes, from all the statistics that we know about, and the figures are difficult in Gaza to verify, malnutrition rates have doubled, at least doubled, over the last 2-3 months. What that means is that at least 10 to 15% of children, which is under 5s, are severely malnourished, acutely malnourished, and that is, I think, a statistic unprecedented anywhere in the world.
So, Bolu Michael is with us. Bolu, how do attacks on medical and also humanitarian facilities impact the delivery of aid and the health situation on ground?
Well, it's quite an unfortunate situation going on right now in Gaza because, blocking humanitarian aid stops doctors and aid workers from helping people. We're seeing that hospitals and clinics are being damaged and destroyed as well. I mean, humanitarian or civilian facilities like hospitals and schools, they are being attacked, which is quite unfortunate. Medicines and food, can't reach those that need them, and it's very important that persons who need this aid actually get them. Right now Israel is in control of humanitarian supply because they fear that Hamas might hijack the entire process. We're also seeing sick and injured people, not having anywhere to go, not having anywhere to get the required treatment that they need to survive. So the entire health system right now is weak, and it's leading to more death and suffering.
Well, Michael, the international community continue to condemn what's happening inside of Gaza there. But how much influence do these condemnations have on the crises?
Well, I'll say it's kind of put pressure on Israel to change its ways, change its system and methods. Right now, for example, they have a humanitarian system whereby they're in control of the aid supply, like I said earlier, because they're afraid that this aid might get into the hand of Hamas or be mismanaged in some way. I mean, the aim of every opposing party or every warring party is to weaken their opponents, right? And then the one that kind of holds control on humanitarian supply kind of has an edge. I think it also raises, global attention and, much more media coverage on this situation, which can push governments, and to take legal and diplomatic action against Israel or against the party that seems to be much more oppressive. But as we know that what alone cannot drive change, cannot solve war, we need to have a real change. Words must be backed with strong action, and we hope we can see that in the coming weeks or months ahead.
Okay. Now, Professor Mukesh, with reports of Gaza's last lifelines collapsing, what sort of maybe short-term or long-term consequences might this humanitarian breakdown have?
I think it is a progressive thing. As we've been watching over the last few months, the amount of humanitarian aid coming in has been intermittent, and it has been gradually reduced. So if you look at the trends of aid delivered, it's been on a downwards track. And so intermittent supplies are getting more and more intermittent, and desperate people are even being attacked as they go for whatever is coming in. And so this is a progressive attrition. So we're not going to see any dramatic shifts immediately. What we're seeing is gradual shifts, but they're reaching a dramatic stage because malnutrition is not just prevalent in children, but there is famine conditions for many adults. And along with the lack of health care and the lack of clean water and medicines, we will see a gradual strangling of the population of Gaza.
But what about the media access? With the restrictions that we have on ground, how do we evaluate the information that we're getting from the humanitarian side? Professor Mukesh.
Well, actually, the there is certainly lack of independent media access, and that hinders verification. Having said that, there are plenty of local journalists and there are plenty of reports coming in from all directions. So if you triangulate those reports, if you, for example, have the same reports being reported from different angles by different people in different parts of Gaza, then I think you've built up a pretty accurate picture of what is going on. So in that sense, unlike in other situations that I've been in the past many years ago, we have plenty of information coming out of Gaza, thanks to the courage of those who are able to report on the ground. And there's still remnants of social media, and even on the Israeli side, the Israeli public also leaking information out. So actually, we know a hell of a lot of what is going on, and hell is the right word to use because it is what's going on.
Bolu, back to you. I'm wondering the role that international organizations and also government, what role can they play in improving humanitarian access, since we're talking about this access thing now? And also, how can they safeguard aid workers in conflict zones like Gaza?
Egypt, for example, has kind of, set the pace, or, is a typical example of, assistance by a nation to the people of Gaza. For example, they made their country an aid route. It's always been. So countries can negotiate safe zones and aid routes. They can also send peace monitors or observers to see what's going on ground, assess the situation, so that we know exactly where resources should be channeled to. They can also support local and international NGOs. A couple of them are on ground doing a lot of work. They can provide them with the resources they need. They can provide them with the protection that they need. And I'm sure it's going to go a long way for the people of Gaza. Countries can also demand that Israel, in fact, both parties, to respect international humanitarian law. It's very important that they adhere to the rules of engagement and ensure as much as possible that even though they have differences and are facing each other, that they are protecting civilian lives. And every war will always cost some funds. So they can provide funds, they can provide funding, they can provide supplies to provide the people of Gaza, everyone in need on both sides. They can provide them with their urgent humanitarian relief or needs.
Professor Mukesh, it can't be easy for the children who are living in these kinds of conditions. One has to wonder if any humanitarian agency is considering the mental state of these children.
Well, we know from experience of many crises that prolonged humanitarian disasters like this one doesn't just have a physical effect, but also mental consequences, and these can last for the rest of a person's life. We also know that when you have acute malnutrition as a child, then the brain is affected and the brain's development is affected, and that cannot be recovered 100%. So the consequences of malnutrition, the consequences of illness are at a young age are permanent. And not only that, they are passed down the generations because women, for example, are unable to have normal childbirth or to have children who are healthy when born. And so definitely the mental trauma and the social trauma adds to the physical trauma, which is obvious, but the fact that it's a generation-long thing, is transmitted down the line, is something that many people don't realize.
Bolu, final question here. In your opinion, what are the challenges that Israel faces in balancing security concerns with humanitarian obligations?
Israel, has been facing this challenge even among their citizens. Some believe that it should be a total wipeout of Hamas, and some feel like they should have a level of negotiation. So they face the challenge of balancing the interest of those within the country, and Israel has been taking control of humanitarian supply because they believe that if they don't, it may reach Hamas instead of the civilians that actually need them. You know, they're under pressure to protect their own citizens as well from attacks, either at home or even abroad or even on the battlefield. You know, it's quite difficult to track what's going on in any war zone, especially the aid that has been distributed. So the war between the two parties is not any different. They're facing the same difficulty as well. And there's been international criticism combined with the criticism from nationals, and they will find it difficult to balance the international criticism, local criticism against their internal security priorities. So the challenge of allowing aid while fighting a group is embedded, is embedded in certain civilian. And what I mean by this is that Hamas always have, they use children and women as human shield. You know, this is another challenge that they might face. I think both parties are probably doing the same. It's quite common in this kind of war, and it will always remain a challenge if humanitarian obligations are not well monitored.